stayed out of trouble. We didn't even really have to ask if they could be there with us. My brother Trent used to like to try and scare us, and like I said before, he went out of his way to gross us out or otherwise annoy us. It was all in good fun though, and we always laughed about it afterwards. One night in the middle of summer, my 3 best friends came over for a weekend sleepover. My parents were going to have a huge barbecue the next day and have some family and friends over for a pool party. It was Friday night, and my friends and I were down in the basement playing Truth or Dare, or some other girly sleepover game. Trent was at his best friend's house, attending a weekend sleepover of his own. That door was off to the right-hand side of where we were all sleeping on the floor, and to the left of us were about 10 doors. I don't know why there were so many doors down there, because they didn't go outside or anything. They were mainly used for storage. Behind us, and somewhat under the steps, was a washer and dryer, and in front of us was the couch. There was 2 medium-sized windows down there. One was directly in front of the couch and television, and the other was to the right of where we were sleeping, next to the cellar door. I heard strange noises. Whoever was doing this was intelligent, at least to some degree. Also, it meant that whatever it was could see me and was watching for when I sat up. I didn't know what to do, and once more, I decided to try to just ignore it. It didn't work, and in fact, the noises got much louder. By this time, all 3 of my friends had heard these noises and had woken up. We all looked at each other, wondering what it could be that was now scratching feverishly at the window. I explained how I thought it was intelligent, and we all started to think that maybe it was someone trying to break into the house. The problem was, the only lights in the basement were in the middle of the room, and turned on by either pulling the string or getting up, and the window was in the backyard. The boys must have heard us and decided to go to the other window, trying to convince us that it wasn't them, or so we thought. As we all stood there in the middle of the room, trying to figure out what to do next, everything suddenly went silent. We were whispering amongst ourselves, all excited to do something to get the boys back. After a few minutes of standing there and listening closely to see where they had gone, we started hearing heavy footsteps. The footsteps were on the side of the house again, and pacing from the side window to the cellar door and back again. The steps were loud, and somehow laughed at how scared we were, and when they did, she would be ready for them. She said she was going to stick her face to the window, and we were supposed to bang on the bottom of the cellar door when she did this. We thought this would scare them, and they would run back next door. Then, we could tell on them and confront them the next day at the barbecue. Grace walked over to the window and waited. The 3 of us stood underneath the cellar door, as instructed, and waited for her cue. We started to hear the pacing between the window and the cellar door again, and Grace decided to peek out of the window to see where they were. She was just planning on looking through the glass when she heard footsteps getting closer to the door and away from the window, answering them. I'll never forget what I saw. At the window, looking right in at us, was a huge, white, ugly, hairy face. It looked a lot like a monkey, but I remember thinking that the eyes somehow were human. They were extremely big and bright green. This thing had fur all over it, white fur, and was trying to stick its head into the window completely. I pointed to the window, and the girls and I just screamed, as this thing screamed back. We were screaming in fear for our lives, but it was screaming in absolute anger and fury. This went on for what seemed noises the creature were making was inhuman, and not something that any of us, including 2 14-year-old boys, could ever make. Plus, I asked Trent and his friend if they had anything to do with it, and they looked at me like I was crazy. I never told anyone about this before, and eventually, it kind of just faded into the background of my memories of my life. We weren't allowed to sleep in the basement anymore, and we also weren't allowed to be in the backyard at night. Lately, I've been seeing a lot of people coming forward and talking about a white Sasquatch in, near, and around Carbondale, and I decided it was time for me to tell my story. I've seen a few encounters like this all over the world as well. I thought it was the coolest vehicle, and I took great care of it. Even though it was rusted in certain areas, I still took great pride in keeping it cleaned and polished. It was so beautiful. So you can only imagine how I reacted when I walked out the side door of my house one morning and found the thing flipped over on its side. I thought I had to be dreaming. Something that still baffles me to this day is how I didn't hear it happen. Either I was in an extremely deep sleep, or someone or something was able to gently lay on its side. But who or what possessed that? I really wanted to put up those trail cameras everywhere, but I couldn't afford to purchase any. Making sure that I could afford my rent and vehicle expenses every month was enough of a challenge. It was only a few nights later that I thought I heard someone walking around outside my house. It was because the footsteps were bipedal that I thought it was a human. Since I didn't have any nearby neighbors, I decided it had to be the owner of the property or a thief. It was as soon as I heard a scratching noise near one of the windows that I jumped up and ran to grab a baseball bat from the closet. Without switching on any lights, I dashed outside, ready to beat someone up. When I came around the corner of the house and I saw what looked like a tall, dark-haired orangutan, I almost lost grip of the baseball bat. Immediately, I knew that I wouldn't be able to inflict any help me. I remember feeling too afraid to even find my phone. Suddenly, my bedroom window went completely dark as the figure hopped off the roof. That was when I thought it was going to throw itself through the glass. For whatever reason, the animal seemed to have run away from my window immediately. Still, I stayed in the place for God knows how long, waiting for any sign that the animal had returned.
You could skip this ad, but don't skip the part that can help you get the job.
Oh, I'm gonna skip that ad,
Granger,
motherfucker.
we're here for you to supply solutions for every industry.
In '99, when I received an invitation to stay with my former neighbors, Jim and Cindy, and visiting their cousin, Steve. Jim and Cindy had just purchased a farm in central Tennessee and needed hired hands for the summer. The farm was around 95 acres and surrounded by woods. Also on this farm were 2 abandoned houses and a couple of ponds. They had a mobile home set up and stayed in there while they were remodeling and updating the 2 houses on their property. It was a great summer job, free room and board, along with all the fishing I could ever desire. I was tasked with the job of helping them restore one of the farmhouses. Jim had installed an electric barbed wire fence that had circled the back half of their property where they were currently living and made a special pin to keep the cows in at night. Another alternative was to totally get off the cot and move away from the window. But since I closed it partially, a lot of the breeze had stopped. I tried to avoid any extra movement, hoping to catch a glimpse of the visitor by using only my peripheral vision. But despite my efforts, I couldn't make out anything in the darkness. I really couldn't shake the feeling that there was something there, and I had a feeling that it would break through the window screen. I laid in the cot, listening to the sounds of the night. Suddenly, the clock on the mantel on the other side of the house chimed, startling both me and whatever was outside. There was no further sounds, no more grunting or bizarre breathing.
We were there for 2 weeks. Our campsite was right next to the lake. On the second to the last night, my cousins and me decided to go to the lake. The idea, we were going to see if we could see any animals. Back then, I had a Maglite. It was one of the big ones with the 4D size batteries. I was scanning the other side of the lake, and we could all see a pair of red eyes glowing. They were low to the water, and I assumed it was drinking water. We could not see the body, just the eyes, so I had the bright idea of shooting at it with our wrist rocket slingshots. We took turns trying to hit it. Like I said, it was an idea. Well, then the animal stood up. I know it stood up because the eyes went up. And If It's True podcast, it'll be right at the top. You can listen that way. It's a lot less draw on your mobile device battery, and it saves you a ton of data if you were on a data plan. But I thought I would just mention that, so maybe I saved somebody some money. Let's take a minute and get a word from our sponsor. Nah, I'm just messing with you. I don't really have a sponsor. I just want to say hi to everybody. I usually just jump into these stories and I don't say much. But I thought I would just say hi, and I appreciate all of you listening. This is a pretty good video, I think. I was grateful for the tip, and we thanked the ranger and set out for our destination. We followed the directions he had written down for us. The site was not easy to find since it ended up being on a road, or off another road, but we finally located it and pulled into the entrance. We traveled further down the dusty gravel course that ended with a loop in a clearing. It was sparse with trees and hitching posts set at regular intervals. To our surprise, there was absolutely no one within view. And my first... This is when things got freaky. As an aside, I should point out that I have always considered myself to be somewhat of a psychic brick. If anyone is going to hear ghosts, talk with their spirit guides or have premonitions, it isn't going to be me. Not that I'm not open to it, I'm just not very sensitive in that way. The sun was getting low in the sky and the air was warm, but still, it was quiet here, even peaceful, yet I could not explain this growing sense of dread.
Well, that's a good Friday there, done and in the books, folks. That shoulder's done. Kind of went with lightweight because I'm still trying to let this left side catch up, you know, and get past that little strain or whatever the fuck it is. I don't know. You know, I'm no medical doctor. I know it's not painful, so it's not a tear, it's not a pull. Only thing I can describe it as is being like automatically the fatigue, you know, from the beginning of the workout on this side, this shoulder, pec, shoulder, whatever, just starts off fatigue. Now, the last week or so, been trying to scale back a little bit and let it catch up or whatever. So the fatigue feeling is just lessening a little bit more each day. Come here, buddy. Here's my boy. Hey, boy. Look at that damn boy. That's since I seen my boy, man. I done lost all train of thought. I just want to go in there and get this old boy a pig ear because he's such a good boy. So I'm going to just cut it short, man. Yeah, you seen what I did with shoulders today. If I come out here, if I be out here tomorrow, it'll be arms probably, and maybe some other little shit, whatever I feel like doing. Other than that, I'll probably be back Sunday. Maybe some flat benching arms or something like that. But till then, man, you know, y'all take it easy.